I never imagined I would have to fight to keep my own house, especially not against someone trying to take it while I was nearly dying. But that is exactly what happened, and the person behind it all was Karen Winters, the iron-fisted president of our homeowners association. Everything spiraled out of control after my appendix ruptured, and I spent 3 weeks hospitalized, completely unaware of the quiet war being waged over my property. 6 months earlier, I had moved into Willow Creek Estates, a pristine suburban neighborhood known for perfectly trimmed lawns, identical mailboxes, and an HOA that enforced its rules with military precision. I work as an architect and run my business from home, and it took me years of saving to finally purchase the house I had always wanted. On the very first day I arrived, while boxes were still stacked in my living room, Karen Winters introduced herself. She stood on my front porch, clutching a clipboard, wearing a tight smile that looked rehearsed rather than friendly. "Welcome to Willow Creek," she said, her voice carrying an edge that made it sound more like a warning than a greeting. "I'm Karen Winters, president of the Homeowners Association. You'll want to review our bylaws immediately. We don't tolerate violations here." She handed me a thick 3-inch binder packed with rules while her eyes darted over my belongings like a border agent inspecting luggage. Then she pointed at my mailbox. "That's 2 inches taller than regulation. You have 7 days to replace it, or fines will be issued." I thanked her calmly and told her I would go over the guidelines. She didn't seem pleased by my polite compliance. Later that week, my neighbor Tom filled in the blanks. Karen, he explained, thrived on conflict. She had been the HOA president for 5 years because no one wanted the stress of running against her. "People just try to stay invisible," he said with a weary shrug. For a while, I managed exactly that. I followed the rules closely and avoided Karen whenever possible. Things stayed peaceful until I decided to plant a small vegetable garden in my backyard. According to the HOA bylaws, gardens were allowed as long as they weren't visible from the street. Mine was tucked behind my house, fully enclosed by a decorative fence. Completely compliant, or so I thought. Karen showed up at my door one Saturday morning, her face flushed with what she clearly believed was moral authority. "Your garden violates Section 12, Paragraph 4, she announced smugly. "All vegetable gardens must be approved by the landscaping committee," which I happened to chair. I calmly pulled out the same binder she had given me and showed her the section stating that gardens simply needed to be out of street view. "I think there's a misunderstanding," I said evenly. "There's nothing in here about committee approval." Her expression hardened instantly. "Then perhaps the bylaws need revising," she snapped. "Until that happens, you have until Monday to remove it, or you'll be fined $50 per day." I refused. From that moment on, Karen made it her mission to punish me. She cited me for grass being a 1/4 inch too tall, a trash bin left visible for half an hour, and even the color of my garden hose being visually disruptive. The fine stacked up quickly, but I challenged everyone during HOA meetings. I quoted the bylaws word for word, and the board regularly overturned her citations. Nothing enraged Karen more than being publicly contradicted. After one particularly tense meeting where the board unanimously ruled in my favor on the garden issue, she confronted me in the parking lot. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "No one has ever embarrassed me like that. You'll regret moving here. I guarantee it." I dismissed it as an empty threat. That was my biggest mistake. 2 weeks later, I woke up at 3 in the morning in unbearable pain. I called 911 and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors discovered my appendix had ruptured. Complications led to sepsis, turning a routine surgery into a life-threatening emergency. I spent 3 weeks hospitalized, followed by 2 more recovering at home, while I was fighting for my life. Karen was apparently fighting for my house. Tom later told me he had seen her coming and going from my property several times. She told neighbors she was checking on things at my request and watering my plants while I was away. In reality, she was laying the groundwork for something far more sinister. On my first day back home, weak and barely steady on my feet, I found an official-looking notice taped to my front door. It claimed that under abandoned property regulations, my home had been transferred to the HOA and placed under new ownership. The document referenced a deed transfer dated 2 weeks earlier. I called the county clerk's office immediately. To my horror, they confirmed the transfer was real. According to their records, I had sold my house to Karen Winters for $1. The paperwork showed that I had personally appeared before a notary and signed everything myself, while I had actually been unconscious in an ICU bed. This is fraud, I told the clerk, my hands shaking. She sympathized, but said I would need to file a legal challenge. Meanwhile, Karen had already served me with the 72-hour eviction notice. I called my cousin Jennifer, a real estate attorney. She arrived quickly, reviewed everything, and assured me the case was blatant fraud. But we need to act fast, she said. We'll file an emergency injunction and pursue criminal charges. Jennifer worked through the night preparing our response while I gathered hospital records proving I could not have signed anything. I also installed security cameras around my house. And the very next morning, Karen returned, this time with two men I had never seen before. These men will assist you with removing your belongings, Karen announced brightly, gesturing toward the two strangers beside her. Her smile was victorious, almost celebratory. I've been generous and allowed you until 5 o'clock this evening. No need to wait for the official eviction. I stepped forward, planting myself firmly in the doorway and blocking her path. Karen, you forged a property deed while I was hospitalized, I said evenly. That's a felony. My attorney has already filed for an emergency injunction and is preparing criminal charges against you. Her expression flickered just briefly before she recovered. That's absurd, she replied dismissively. You signed the papers yourself. I have a notarized document proving it. I was unconscious in intensive care due to sepsis, I said, holding up my hospital records. And the security cameras I installed last night just recorded you demanding I vacate a house you fraudulently claim. Would you like to continue this conversation here, or would you prefer to wait until we're in court? The two men exchanged uneasy looks. One of them cleared his throat. We were told this was a standard eviction, he muttered. We don't want any involvement in something like this. Within seconds, both of them retreated down the walkway. Karen's face twisted with fury. You think you're clever, she snapped. But I have connections in this town you couldn't begin to understand. By the time I'm finished with you, you'll wish you had just walked away from this house. Later that same day, the judge granted our emergency injunction, legally preventing any eviction and securing my right to remain in my home while the case moved forward. Jennifer immediately filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney, submitting my hospital records, the forged deed, and the security footage of Karen's visit. The investigation progressed faster than I expected. The notary whose stamp appeared on the deed had no record of the transaction and denied ever witnessing my signature. A handwriting expert confirmed the signature was not mine. Financial records revealed that Karen had purchased large amounts of furniture and appliances the day after the deed transfer, clearly planning to move into my home. The most incriminating evidence came from her laptop, which was seized under a warrant. Investigators found multiple draft versions of the forged deed, internet searches about claiming abandoned property and forging signatures, and even a detailed floor plan of my house, with notes about how she intended to redecorate each room. 3 weeks after I returned home from the hospital, we appeared in court. Karen arrived dressed impeccably in a tailored business suit, carrying an expensive handbag, radiating confidence. She seemed convinced her community status would protect her. It didn't. The judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and sharp, unyielding eyes, reviewed the evidence with visible disbelief. When Karen's attorney attempted to frame the situation as a misunderstanding regarding my hospitalization, the judge cut him off. Counsel, she said coldly, the evidence demonstrates that your client forged legal documents to seize ownership of a home while its rightful owner was hospitalized with a life-threatening condition. There is no misunderstanding here, only deliberate and criminal fraud. When Karen took the stand, her composure began to crumble. Under Jennifer's questioning, she initially claimed I had signed the paperwork before being hospitalized. But when confronted with time-stamp discrepancies and medical records proving I was incapacitated, she changed her story. He was going to sell it to me anyway, she insisted defensively. We had an understanding. I just moved things along. Do you have any written proof of this agreement? Jennifer asked, No, Karen admitted. It was verbal. A verbal agreement, Jennifer pressed, with a man who was unconscious in intensive care. Is that your sworn testimony? Karen suddenly lost control. He didn't deserve that house, she shouted, standing abruptly as the judge slammed her gavel. He moved into our neighborhood and immediately broke the rules. That garden was an eyesore. His mailbox violated regulations. Someone had to teach him a lesson. A stunned silence filled the courtroom. Karen's attorney buried his face in his hands. The judge looked openly disgusted. Mrs. Winters, the judge said sharply, this court finds that you knowingly committed forgery, fraud, and attempted theft of real property. These are serious felony offenses. She turned to the bailiff. Take the defendant into custody. Karen recoiled in disbelief as handcuffs were produced. You can't be serious, she gasped. I'm the HOA president. I volunteer. People respect me. You attempted to steal a man's home while he was fighting for his life, the judge replied icily. You will be held without bail pending sentencing. Turning to me, the judge continued, the fraudulent deed transfer is hereby nullified. Your ownership of the property is fully restored. The defendant will also be ordered to pay restitution for all legal expenses incurred. As Karen was led away in cuffs, the judge delivered her final judgment. Based on the severity of your crimes and your complete lack of remorse, you are facing a minimum sentence of 5 to 7 years in state prison and fines of up to $75,000. Karen's face went pale. But my reputation, she whispered. My position in the community. You should have considered that before committing felony fraud, the judge said, already moving on to the next case.